business and land ownership from foreign entities or by foreign entities in Oklahoma. There are some measures in the legislature right now that are looking to regulate that, put some red tape around who can own what kind of land as it relates to critical infrastructure. I know you did that executive order last year, kind of looking into the level that we're invested in such foreign adversarial enterprise. What were the results of that report and your thoughts on the bills looking to draw that red tape?
Yeah, well, first off, it's already illegal to own, having a foreign national, Chinese national to own land in Oklahoma. We see some straw buyer situations, and we're digging into how do we close that loophole, how do we hold people accountable if they're allowing that to happen. But I think the other big picture item that people are concerned about nationally is around critical infrastructure, whether it's our military bases or it's electricity generation. So we're looking at all of that. I do not want to grow government, so if there's bills that are going to grow government, I'm opposed to that. But there's also federal agencies that need to engage in this that are supposed to be looking at foreign investments in the U.S. So we need to encourage our federal partners to look at that as well. There's bills floating around that not more than 25% could be owned of certain farmland if you're a foreign ownership. That's very complicated when you think about a public company and investing in that. So we need our federal partners and Bank Secrecy Act and different things with them to track money coming into the U.S. So we need help from our federal partners on that. We can't do that all on the state side. Specifics, I'd need to get our law enforcement to help you with that. We can get back with you on it. Yes, sir.
Hey. How's it going, Governor? There
Excellent.
Hey, thank you. Let's talk state income tax cut, okay? So we've got a lot of questions.
Was this planted? This is awesome. Let's talk about state income tax.
Let's talk about it. We got a lot of questionable cuts, and we've learned about from the feds over the past several weeks, several months. Board of Equalization revenue underwater by $300 million is what the phrase they keep saying. We've got possible Department of Ed cuts that could come. SNAP could be cut. Medicaid, Paxton's concerned about it because it would cost $500 million if it became 60-40. State paying for it. 60 feds. Hundreds of millions in questionable. Cutting the state income tax cut, is it not the right time for it? Or does it just sound good, let's do it? Or what's your thoughts on that?
Man, you ask a bunch of questions there.
I know.
So
do we have the money for it? Is it worth it with all this questionable cuts that could come?
So first off, I think most Oklahomans, most Americans are really excited about the President of the United States looking at spending on a federal level. Okay, we cannot keep spending $2 trillion over our income. And I break it down for myself to think about this way, and I'll ask Oklahomans this question. Do you max out your credit card at the end of the year, borrow $20,000 on your credit card to give to a local charity? Of course you don't. Why are we borrowing all this money from a federal level to spend in humanitarian efforts around the world? And I think we've all seen Trump and what he's been exposing, all of the wasteful spending around the world, right? I'm not saying this stuff is not important, but you have to have a limit, and it's called how much revenue that we have, right? That's how you're going to determine, do we have the money to spend it? So I encourage them to cut, to get a balanced budget. The other thing that I think is important to understand is if you go back as early as 2019, you can double check my math here, but 18, 19, if our federal spending on the expense side could have been frozen in 2018, we would have a balanced budget right now, okay? Really, this is not that complicated. It is to slow the growth of federal spending, and our revenue is going to continue to grow. We're going to continue to increase revenue, but what happens is, from a federal level, we're spending, the spending increases is just getting more and more and more and more. So that's my comments on the national level. Our interest-only payment is $1 trillion now. Okay, and that's before we reprice the bonds, and it probably is going to be closer to 1.8 trillion if you have a true what the new interest rates are on borrowing costs. So $1 trillion interest only. That means you're not doing principal and interest like a mortgage payment. You're not paying this $36 trillion down. And it's worse because we keep borrowing $2 trillion over our spending, so we keep adding to that. That is what is inflationary pressure that's hurting moms and dads and families in Oklahoma and across America. So I'll say that big picture. Oklahoma, we have to live with a balanced budget. Oklahomans elected a businessman governor 6 years ago. We had zero money in savings. Now we have the best economy we've ever had. Now we have a $5 billion savings account. Can we afford to give a 0.5 point cut back to Oklahomans, which is $240 million out of this budget? 100% we can afford to do that. You don't figure out how much money you can spend and then at the end of the year say, well, how much money do we have to tithe, honey? Or how much money do we have to save? You save and you do your priorities up front, or you give your money to the Lord and you tithe 10% first, and then you spend your money. It's no difference in our budget. We need to cut the taxes by a 0.5 point today, and then we'll figure out how much we can spend. Because if you do it the other way, government can never spend enough money. They will always come to you and say, give me more money because look how much more good I can do for society. So again, I mean, I can go tit for tat on all the different spending, but we have increased spending a bunch since I've been here. But we've done it responsibly. I've cut taxes. I cut the grocery tax. I've got the savings account. And it's time to do another cut for Oklahomans. The money doesn't disappear. I'll say it one more time. The money just doesn't stay in the government's pocket. It stays in your pockets to spend at the grocery store, to spend at the bicycle shop, to be spent in throughout the economy that then ends up coming back. And it's nothing stagnant. So when you hear, oh, if we cut 240 million or annualize at 600 million, that's a static way to look at it. It's never static. We are creating a business-friendly climate. If we don't cut, we're going to catch ourselves as Oklahomans being an outlier. Texas has a 0% income tax. Arkansas just went lower than us. Kansas just went lower than us. Colorado's lower than us. Iowa, Nebraska just cut to get lower than us. We have to compete with these businesses coming to Oklahoma. As the businessman governor, I'm warning Oklahoma, we have to cut. Do not believe the fact that the legislature, we need to spend more of the people's money. It's the people's money. Yes, sir.
Hi.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
So, announcement today that Google is buying some land in Stillwater to open a new data center. What does this mean for the state, for economic development, jobs, all of those things?
Yeah, we're really excited. We've been working on this for a long time. CLO was able to put that land together for Google. And, they obviously already have, I believe they're number 1 or number 2 biggest data center in the entire world in Pryor, Oklahoma. It's great. Pryor schools are off of the funding formula. They get their own tax revenue now from Google, which is great for our school system out there in eastern Oklahoma. The jobs that they create. This data center in Stillwater is going to be focused more around AI. So that's really, really good for technical degrees and high-tech jobs. And it's just a testament to our business-friendly climate. I don't want to lose that back on the tax policy side. And it's because of our energy, because we have one of the most affordable, reliable grids in the country, that they're moving to Oklahoma. That's why getting behind the meter done is so important, to make sure we can continue to have excess energy generation in Oklahoma. It's going to be a differentiator between us and these data centers and AI centers and manufacturing coming to Oklahoma or coming to other states. So we got to keep that momentum going. But overall, we're really, really excited about Google, and it's just going to be a great project, great construction jobs, great everything there. Just not the direct jobs, but really when you have the economy booming, it helps everyone, and it helps education, infrastructure, healthcare, everybody.
Outside on the steps of the Capitol, you were just there. There was a rally to say thank you to legislators and yourself for the parental choice tax credit. Obviously, there's been concern following a tax commission report from a few Oklahomans, many, saying that this was just going to wealthy Oklahomans. What's your message to those who say that? And then also, outside, you advocated to raise the cap. Can you explain a little bit more about that and what you're hoping to do?
Yeah, absolutely. And first, I like to preface this to say that more competition is good in education, right? Shouldn't be a one-size-fit-all in education. We don't have one grocery store. We don't have one government grocery store or one government anything. So we need competition in our education system, and we're getting that done. And that is going to be hugely beneficial for Oklahoma. The people that say that the tax credit just went towards rich people, simply not true. You don't know how many families, if you walked around outside there, regular working families, very middle class to poor families coming up to me, thanking me for this opportunity that they had to send their kids to the school of their choice. And you know, some kids are going to stay, 80% of kids are going to stay and go to their public school. So that's why it was important for me to continue to fund public education at the highest levels we've ever done. But I set a separate set of money over here, totally separate from the public education money. And so if a kid is not learning at their public school, or they're getting bullied, or a million different reasons, a parent chooses this option over here, it actually, per pupil funding, goes up at the public school. And so why rich people already had school choice. We just gave school choice to every single working family in Oklahoma. And so totally disagree with that argument. I tried to have no cap before, and just, why is the government standing in the way? Let's educate every kid in Oklahoma, regardless of their income and regardless of some cap. And I think we need to do that. We need to obviously grandfather in the people that get into the system, so there's not a start and stop with the schools to create more opportunities. And really, it's not just your traditional schools. It could be specialty schools. It could be the aviation academies. It could be kids at entrepreneurial schools and STEM schools, and schools getting ready for the ag industry or getting ready for aerospace. There's a million different school ideas out there, and I want to inject that competition in Oklahoma to get ready for the workforce. I think it's a free market solution to education and to improve our education. Because at the end of the day, let's make sure that we have the best opportunity, the best education in the country, and I think you do that through more options and letting parents have more decision-making over where their kids go.
A few months ago, you toured countries in Asia, spoke to heads of industry, had conversations about them investing in Oklahoma. Has there been any further conversations or any progress on that?
Yes, there has been. So some of the oil and gas industry folks that came with me on that trip, they've already signed deals to sell more Oklahoma LNG to our allies in the Middle East. We also are currently talking to other companies about continuing to come here and develop and putting Oklahoma on the map. We're going to have an announcement later this month about a company that I met in at SHOT Show that chose Oklahoma for another big manufacturing facility. So we'll make that announcement here in a couple weeks. But yeah, a lot of good things are going. Oklahoma is number 8 in people moving to our state. You can see it with our revenue and our economy and the excitement that's happening. And so when I go on those trade missions, it's really to introduce Oklahoma to other parts of the world. Because if you think about it, if you're in Europe or you grow up in Asia, they love America. But a lot of times what they think about America is Hollywood or New York. And I'm telling them that's the worst place to start a business, right? You want to be in Oklahoma for distribution purposes, for workforce, for a great regulatory environment, business climate, tax environment. And so just really putting us on the map. And so when they're coming, so we've got a lot of those companies, we schedule now visits to have another Asian day here. Anyway, it's going to be exciting over the next couple of years. Thank you.
Governor, you talked a little bit about
You know, with my leadership position in the National Governors Association, we put together, certain statements that we can come together on a bipartisan method, Republican and Democrat governors. And I think the statement was something to the effect of, states need a seat at the table. And I think Republican and Democrat governors alike agree on just more flexibility. We were also on, the chairman of the National Governor Association is Governor Polis, and he had a Zoom call with some governors and also the Secretary of Education, Secretary McMahon. And as you're hearing on the news, they may be cutting the federal Department of Education. Well, that sounds scary. It's not scary at all for Oklahoma. What that means is they're talking about, we educate our kids in Oklahoma. We pay our teachers. We build the schools. It's no different than that in Rhode Island or Florida or Texas. It's the states that are doing the educating of our kids. So what exactly does the federal Department of Education do? They manage a funding formula, but as long as the state's getting the block grants or the flexibility to educate our kids, aren't we closer to what Oklahomans need and what is the workforce that we need to train our kids for than somebody in Washington, D.C.? So we applaud the president's efforts to look at that federal spending to say, give us more flexibility, and we're going to be able to do it better here in Oklahoma than somebody in Washington, D.C. So I don't think that's scary at all. I think it's something that should be talked about. I think President Reagan was talking about it. The federal bureaucracy has grown so much, it's so out of control that it's really putting so many requirements on states. We need more flexibility. And I think, whether you're the New Mexico governor or the Oklahoma governor, as long as we can take those federal dollars and spend it, matter of fact, I say federal dollars, there are tax dollars that go to the federal government and then come back to the state. They just get washed through a 30% bureaucracy before they come back.
Kind of piggybacking off that, there are reports today that more than 1,000 employees of NOAA have received layoffs notices, and obviously NOAA is a very important part of our economy, particularly down in Norman with OU. What have you heard about any of that? And are you, I know Congressman Cole's been kind of involved in that too, but what have you heard, and are you afraid that might hurt Oklahoma's economy?
Well, number one, that's just another one of the rumors that everybody's hearing, right? We're hearing about, you said it, the 60-40 cut, they're changing the Medicaid spending, and we heard about Tinker a couple weeks ago, and just tons of rumors. What I do think is this administration is going to look at, the low-hanging fruit is some of the humanitarian stuff that's done outside of the U.S. that won't affect Americans at all. Secondly, I think if they do cut those things, they're going to allow you to step into it over time, and we'll be able to step in and retrain our workforce. We'll be able to figure out the Medicaid funding if the feds did split that or did change that federal match program. But again, a lot of this is just rumors at this point. Of course, we don't want to lose an Oklahoman. We don't want an Oklahoman to be cut. But every state, the deal is in government spending, it's like, oh yeah, there's a problem here, but cut everybody but mine, right? So I encourage the president and them to be looking at all of it, right? What makes sense for the American people? There's been so much mission creep over time, we can't spend $2 trillion over our income, and I think that's the big picture. Congress has a tough job to decide what's the most important thing to spend on, and but I would encourage them to lock in the expenses, try to get those flattened out, and then we can grow out of it over time.
I promised that I'd keep this quick, so I'll do my best. You mentioned Mays County prior, Mid-America Industrial Park, business recruitment, excuse me, and the need for energy and electricity. The Grand River Dam Authority has a bill this year. They're requesting an increase in their bonding capacity, $1.6 billion. Some people think that's a lot. Where do you have a position on that? Are you in favor of letting them add a couple new generation facilities, or you have concern about growing the size of the state power plant? I know it's key to the business recruitment efforts you've had.
Yeah. So 2 points I'll make on that. You're in the weeds, but basically what you're asking is, do I approve or am I favorable for GRDA getting more bonding authority so they can build more generation? The answer is yes, 100%. Whether it's new generation by GRDA or PSO or OG&E or any other provider, I'm for that. Behind the meter, I'm for private companies coming and creating new gas turbines and setting up long-term contracts to facilitate not interconnect to the grid, but literally just providing power for a new huge gigawatt manufacturing facility. Now, what I'll also caveat and say that I've been telling the leadership and GRDA themselves, this is a state-owned asset. They need to be returning a return to the taxpayers. So in other words, if you had a $2 billion asset, you would demand a return for it. Otherwise, you sell it, right? And so I think before I got here, people were talking about selling GRDA. I don't think we need to do that, but I do think that we should look at them returning some kind of return to the Treasury or basically the taxpayers for the asset that we have. They sell, and now their argument will be, well, we provide that benefit to the town, so they sell wholesale electricity, then the town makes their money by selling retail to their citizens. But PSO does the same thing, and PSO has to return a return to their shareholders as well. The state of Oklahoma, or the taxpayers of Oklahoma, are the shareholders of GRDA, and so do I want them to have more generation? Yes, but I do want them thinking about they need a return to the taxpayers of some kind. And I think just like the CLO, the corpus that we have in the CLO office, we get a return of over $100 million to education every year. And to me, in my head, it's no different. And so I'm really been pushing ever since I got here. And I think that's something that hopefully I don't think GRDA or the board should consider doing. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. Great rest of your week and then weekend. See you, Oklahoma.